With the election just 2 weeks from tomorrow, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are hitting the campaign trail with packed schedules today. Hello, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee.
And I'm John Scott. Donald Trump is crisscrossing the state of Florida, where early voting is underway. He'll be holding events in 3 major cities, as the latest polls show the Republican nominee trailing Hillary Clinton by a few points in this all-important battleground state. But the Trump campaign says they can still win this state come Election Day. Senior national correspondent John Roberts live in St. Augustine with more. John.
John, good morning to you. A very important state for Donald Trump, which is why he is spending a couple of days here. Let's take a look at the map and see where he will be today. He begins the day in Palm Beach County. He stayed overnight in Miami. A couple of small events there, no big campaign rallies. That's Palm Beach County. Then he comes north to St. Johns County, one of the most conservative, if not the most conservative counties in all of Florida, where he's got a rally at the St. Augustine Amphitheater here. And then this afternoon, this evening, he'll be over in Hillsborough County in Tampa for a big rally there. What do all of these counties have in common? They begin early voting today. Not every county in Florida begins today. It's kind of staggered throughout the first part of this week, but they do begin today. Yesterday, he was in Collier County, specifically Naples, for a big rally there, where he again doubled down on this idea that the entire political system and the vote is rigged against him, making no apology for continuing to say that. Here's what Trump said yesterday.
If we win on November 8th, we are going to fix our rigged system. It's a rigged, broken, corrupt system. They want me to take that back. Let me tell you, folks, it's a rigged system. And we are going to drain the swamp of corruption in Washington, D.C.
And a story out today that Donald Trump will say at his events here in St. Augustine and again in Tampa is more proof of that. Fox News has confirmed that a super PAC aligned with Democratic Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe gave nearly $500,000 to the 2015 state Senate campaign of Dr. Jill McCabe. Now, why is that significant, you say? First of all, Governor Terry McAuliffe is best friends with Hillary and Bill Clinton. Dr. Jill McCabe is the wife of Andrew McCabe, who is the deputy director of the FBI and who oversaw the Hillary Clinton email investigation. In a statement to the Wall Street Journal, which broke this story, the FBI says that during the campaign, Andrew McCabe, quote, played no role, attended no events, and did not participate in fundraising or support of any kind for his wife, Dr. Jill McCabe. But of course, Republicans will be all over this today, insisting, how can he remain impartial when people so close to Hillary Clinton gave his wife so much support for her failed 2015 state Senate bid? John?
All right, John Roberts. We're going to be talking more about that story a bit later on Happening Now. Thank you.
Certainly notable and breaking this morning, we should mention, so a lot more on that. Also, Hillary Clinton holding a rally today in another battleground state. If Trump's in Florida, she's in New Hampshire, as a new ABC News poll gives her a 12-point lead nationally over Donald Trump. Clinton and her surrogates are now beginning to focus on down-ballot Democratic candidates in an effort to turn the Congress blue. Republicans, though, as you know, not giving up without a fight. And there's a big question about whether giving up at all. Let's bring in A.B. Stoddard, an associate editor and columnist for Real Clear Politics. Dan Henninger is the deputy editorial page editor for the Wall Street Journal. It's great to have you both. Of course, we're focusing on the ABC polls. You see this big double-digit lead by Hillary Clinton. Our viewers are going to hear that a lot today. But then, Dan, you see polls like the one from Investors Business Daily that has the race in a dead heat. Now, this is definitely an outlier poll, but it meets our standards to talk about, Dan. And I'm curious what you think about the focus all of a sudden on down ballot. Is that too much focus too soon?
Oh, I don't think so, Jenna. We're very close to the end of this election. And if the Real Clear Politics average suggests anything, that Trump is behind by a number that historically has been very difficult to overcome. And for down ballot, what that means is if the head of the ticket is, say, running behind 4 or 5 points, then the down ballot Senate races can remain competitive. But once that the head of the ticket starts falling off between 5 and 10 points, it becomes very difficult because of the dynamics of turnout in states for the Senate candidates to overcome that. So I think most of these Senate Republican candidates are coming to the conclusion that they are on their own in places like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and New Hampshire, and that they are going to have to basically separate themselves from Donald Trump at this point. If he's talking about a rigged election, rather than saying that the Democrats have rigged the election, that would include everybody out there, including them. And I don't think they can participate in that.
I've heard this before, AB. It's all sounding familiar in this campaign. We're going to have to separate ourselves from Donald Trump. The toxic nature of Donald Trump, only to see those same Republicans step forward and want to align themselves with him. So do you think we're seeing that cycle sort of play itself over again, or are we in a different period, as Dan is suggesting?
Well, there are actually different states with different circumstances, like the governor of Ohio, John Kasich. He is not endorsed Donald Trump. He didn't show up at the convention in his own state. But Rob Portman, the Republican senator there, is outperforming Donald Trump by a very healthy margin, and looks like it would take an enormous Hillary Clinton margin in that state, where, by the way, she's behind, in order for her to sink Rob Portman. So there are places where people are protected and doing much better than Donald Trump. But in places like Pennsylvania, for Senator Pat Toomey, that's very tough. And I agree with Daniel. If Republicans want to preserve their majorities and protect House seats and Senate seats, they really need to begin to separate themselves and say, look, we really need to be a check on a Hillary Clinton administration. We can't let her have a Democratic Congress, because while I look at that national poll with a 12-point lead for Hillary Clinton, and I think that means nothing, because in some of the battleground states, they're really quite close. And any of these terrible ethical stories for her could end up ultimately, or a WikiLeaks revelation, depressing her vote and tip it to Trump in some of the states. If you're running for the Senate or the House and you're looking at your own state and you're looking at a big margin, then you do need to worry, and you do need to make the case that you're running against Clinton.
What about the psychology of all of this, guys? That the race is essentially over for president, and yet both candidates, and especially Hillary Clinton, need the turnout to make sure that actually is the case for her. So, Daniel, what about that? If the conversation, the narrative is 2 weeks before actual voting day, and yes, there are some early voting happening, do you think that impacts turnout in a way that could be very significant?
Oh, I think so. I think maybe that's where it's all going to come out. I mean, one of the most interesting things Donald Trump said yesterday in Naples, Florida, didn't get much coverage, but he sort of said offhandedly that it would be nice if the Republicans could give him some support, get behind his first 100 days. What he's talking about there is the fact that Hillary Clinton's resources, her field workers, are about 4 times as great as Donald Trump's right now. And in these waning days, it's turnout, it's door to door, it's going into dormitories, making phone calls. And her ability to do that is vastly greater than his. She has a lot of money to spend on TV advertising now. And I think that is kind of what is concerning the Trump campaign. They've got this tremendously charismatic candidate. He can churn out great crowds of people. But are they going to be able to turn out votes? Are his people, as these numbers lengthen like this, going to get depressed and start staying home with nobody knocking on their door to tell them to get out there and vote?
Well, it's also who they're campaigning with, who the main candidates are campaigning with, AB. And what's interesting is that the most popular political figure in the country right now is not in the top of either ticket, obviously, because neither has above 50% when it comes to approval ratings for voters. It's Michelle Obama. And there's no Republican equivalent for Michelle Obama when it comes to approval ratings from likely voters. What is the impact of some of Hillary's team, AB, and where they're campaigning with the candidate, and what that might mean not only for her but for the down ballot as well?
Right. If Michelle Obama is going into places that she's going to be more appealing than even Hillary herself or her own husband, the president, and she's able to hold these rallies where they have tables to sign you up, to make sure you know where your precinct is, to help you reach your friends, to get on an app and galvanize and energize, people, like-minded neighbors, coworkers, friends, that's going to generate more turnout. And that's why the more surrogates, the more events, the more turnout. And it's true, really, Donald Trump, to be complaining at this point that he doesn't have a good turnout and he's being outspent is ridiculous. He's never invested in a real campaign on the ground. He thought he could do it from the cheap on TV and Twitter from the air, and that's what he's done the entire time. And if you're a Republican now trying to buttress yourself against this tidal wave against Donald Trump, you're feeling a little ripped off that you don't have any ground operation nationally to try to protect people down the ballot, but also just turn out votes for Donald Trump. Donald Trump needs people on the ground to turn out votes for him, to make up the difference on the margins, and he just doesn't have the presence. He had one office in Florida before Labor Day. Then the RNC helped him get to somewhere around 27. Hillary Clinton has twice that number in Florida. Who didn't know a year and a half ago that you needed field offices in Florida? Everybody knew that. So Donald Trump has failed his own campaign and the rest of the ballot by ignoring a ground operation from day one.
And as we see in the polling, and John Roberts mentioned, Donald Trump still maintains the lead in Florida, but we'll see about the door-knocking operations and how much it means at the end of the day. Dan and AB, great to have you both. Thank you very much.
Thanks.